Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session this morning. I'm going to bore you with some slides for just about 10 minutes, and then we'll hand over to Jerome and some of our customers who will be able to give you kind of real-life examples of what and how and why and where they've deployed Chrome and G Suite within their environment. So very quickly, Matt Stevens, I sit within our EMEA go-to-market organisation for Chrome Enterprise. My remit is to sell the dream that is Chrome as an alternative to Windows or Mac or Linux devices. And this is our statutory slide, so please feel free to tell us that we're great or terrible, hopefully the former. This will become available, I think, about 20 minutes into the slot. So our times are a-changing, right? 20 years ago, don't go near a car with a stranger. Now, with the advent of Uber and things like this, it is a very different world in which we live. Technology is changing what we do, how we consume application services and things like that. So yes, if you told someone 20 years ago that you were going to just hop in someone's car on the back of a connection on the phone, they probably would have laughed at you or locked you up. But it is very different. And that delivery of services is brought about by our consumption of everything in the cloud. Okay, so vinyl sales are up, but more and more we're consuming content in a different way, in a digital manner, which is delivered via the cloud, and that in turn is changing how we look to work, and consumerization of the workplace is something that we're seeing more and more. Work is a thing you do, not a place you go, is something that we see more with customers that we engage with, and that the traditional 9 to 5 and your desk is here is something that is changing as well. And it's driving flexibility in terms of what we offer as an organization, but also what our end users and internal customers, if you will, are demanding from us. And that pace of change is something that is being acknowledged by IT leaders globally. And it really is impacting also how they're having to shift. And one of the customers that we have on here, Hackney Council, London Borough of Hackney, a little later, their remit from a C-level was changing IT as being someone who is beaten and seen as being negative within the organisation to being a trusted partner and being seen as someone who is delivering services that we actually want to use and devices and ways of working that we actually want to consume. And if you look at the blend of kind of Chrome Enterprise, kind of my world from the endpoint perspective, and G Suite as a collaboration tool, it's really being driven by, I think the middle stat here, the 86% of failures around lack of collaboration. It's so powerful. I've been at Google now 4 years, and pre that I was always Microsoft and Outlook and Words, sheets and slides. Doc sheets and slides is Google, but Word, Excel, PowerPoint. The Google way of working, and I know I'm from Google and I'm biased, but I genuinely wonder if I could go back to an environment that isn't just so natively and easily collaborative. And it really does drive flexibility, and you talk to people more. I know social media, there's an argument there, but that collaboration around how you deliver and consume content internally really does drive a different way of working. Everything is open within Google, so you've got access to everything, which it drives an access to information in a very different way, and it drives also how we engage and how we consume. So this cloud worker narrative that you'll see from us as an organisation, we're seeing on average people spend 4.9 hours per day in the browser as the advent of kind of SaaS-based tools and services become available. I live probably 90% plus in the browser with G Suite and other tools and services that I use, and that really does allow you to drive flexibility. And cloud worker and frontline worker, I think, have often been seen as kind of front of house, but we really do see with the change of app delivery, you be able to deliver it anywhere, and cloud worker be remote from a physical desktop and drive flexibility in terms of what you want to do across the business, right? And the commercial offering that I'll touch on to in a second, really means that you can democratize that flexibility of working and drive endpoints into parts of the business that you might not historically have been able to do so. it's not a silver bullet though, right? We do need to ensure that in doing this, we are delivering a better experience to our end users. We have to be seen to be driving better value without compromising security first and foremost in the end user experience. We will comfortably stand on stage, I'm not sweating, and say that our security posture is something that we're incredibly proud of, okay? And we fundamentally believe that what we've baked into our platforms, be that G Suite, be it Chrome Enterprise, all the way through to Android, YouTube, Drive, Search, Maps, etc., security is the foundation block upon which all of those are delivered. And if you look at our platform ecosystem, we've now got 8 platforms or products with over 1 billion users, and we consume the malicious activity that people are trying to get into those platforms to deliver a really robust experience, which in turn means that we can address some of the challenges, okay? So we are aware that some organizations will have Win32 applications that we're never going to be able to work with, okay? But the blended approach to how we allow delivery and consumption of applications and services onto our endpoints and services means that we can address these, okay? The operational shift to strategic, and I think that different way of working, I've got a customer in Germany who's got 5,000 legacy applications, and they're really looking at how they rationalize that number, which in turn will mean that they've got a better strategic delivery of services to their end users. And Chrome really does allow you to deliver these in hassle-free. So hassle-free is one of the key things that we see. I'm a simple man, and I like my tools simple, and the ability to deliver that in a way that gives you a consistent user experience across your commercial and security stacks is kind of fundamental to what we want to deliver, while at the same time not giving you a new way of working that encumbers your IT resource even more, okay? Chrome as an OS, these are the founding fathers, if you will, of Chrome. Speed, simplicity, security, and shareability, okay? Fundamentally, these devices, I've got a 4-year-old Chromebook, not child, but 4-year-old Chromebook, which is as quick now as when I got it 4 years ago when I started here, okay? And that's something that it's just alien to other platforms, okay? And that means that from a simplicity perspective, you can deploy, you can share devices across your organization. You know that once a device is enrolled, anybody within the organization can use it. You've got change management process, which is simpler, and all of it, again, is on that bedrock of security, okay? And then if you come into the elements that really matter to organizations, you want to and need to drive productivity, okay? If you read the press in the UK, it's doom and gloom, productivity isn't where it should be, all that kind of thing. If we can implement and deliver tools and services that help you drive that productivity, but at the same time maintain and improve your control from a central perspective, and again, that multi-layered approach to security, I could bore you for hours, but unfortunately I've got about 90 seconds. It really is fundamental to what we do, okay? 24/7 support, that throat to choke is obviously important, and if you can remove and reduce support call impact, if you look at Chrome, within Google, we've got Windows, Mac, and Chrome devices. The Windows piece is shrinking, as you'd probably expect in this audience. But we see 80% fewer support calls on Chrome versus Windows, and 65% fewer support calls on Chrome versus Mac. So it's an incredibly stable platform that you can deliver to your end users, okay, which in turn reduces the cost that you would see from a support organization. And then G Suite, okay, I've kind of touched on it, but that ability to internally connect, create, share, control access, you obviously don't want anybody internally or externally being able to access documents that you've created. You need to be able to implement levels of security and control across those documents, and you've got that ability, you've got full audit trails within that G Suite proposition that mean that you can ensure, again, that you know who is doing what where with those documents, okay? And if it's something that is internal only or organization or kind of project team only, you've got the ability to control that, okay? And it really is a different way of working. It's something, Succum and see, what was the mint that was, but it really is one of those propositions that once you start using G Suite coupled with Chrome, you get it, right? It's something that it just changes how you kind of look at document collaboration. version control, all that stuff goes because you've got it, you send a link, everyone's working in the same document at the same time. That in turn really does drive this commercial offering, right? There's a very, very strong payback. And if you look at just the Chrome piece, everyone jumps to the hardware as where they would make their savings, but you really do make your savings in, the material difference comes in kind of what you strip out from operational costs, additional licensing costs that you need to manage those additional platforms and services, okay? You don't need all the stuff that you do need on other platform devices to manage and secure them, and your security posture is maintained because you know that a device is rebootable in 30 seconds rather than 30 minutes or longer for others. So you know that your end users are going to breed good practice because they're delivering that. All of this operationally means that you're doing less audit control, less patching, all of that stuff for your apps and tools and services and devices, okay? But that's it for me. I've just about managed to stay close to my 10 minutes. I'm Google. I'm going to say this to you all day long if we lock the doors, but we've got 3 customers here who have deployed Chrome and G Suite within their organizations, and they've done it in good numbers as well. And there's some really interesting use cases. These are going to be manningly compared by Jerome, a colleague of mine who sits within the G Suite organization. So I'll hand over to Jerome for now, okay? And thank you very much.
So hello everybody, I'm Jerome Grateau. I'm EMEA director for G Suite, and I'm really pleased to have such a diverse kind of panel today. So I will propose that you introduce shortly and kind of speak about which organization you are working with for.
Yeah, so I'm Cate McLaurin. I work for the London Borough of Hackney, and we're a G Suite and Chrome customer. I arrived in Hackney about 18 months ago, just as we were starting to roll out G Suite and Chrome, and it's been a really interesting journey watching what impact that's had on all of the things that Matt's just mentioned, in fact, but I'm particularly interested in the impact it's had on team behaviour and how people are collaborating.
Cool. I'm Elliott from Deliveroo. Hopefully most of you have heard of Deliveroo. I look after most things around like G Suite and Chrome within Deliveroo, and I guess our story is slightly different from some of the others that you might hear today, where we didn't go Google, we were just using G Suite from the beginning. So from the point that the company started to the point that we're now in 13 markets and a good few thousand employees, our journey has been more around how we support the organization as we grow and bring in new kind of ways, lots of people coming in and different ways of working in the past, and helping them kind of like bring themselves into this kind of like modern way of working.
And I'm Russell from DFS Group, and our sales probably been going longer than Delivery, but we also own Sofa Workshop, Sofology, and Dwell as brands. We have 4 brands. I had 4 different email systems, and collaboration of documents was becoming a real problem. So we went G Suite across the entire group. We've since then rolled out about 1,200 Chrome devices to our sales teams. And I've also just upgraded our web platform to Google Cloud last week. And I personally have given up my Windows device to use a Chrome device now as well.
Great. So thanks again for being there. So Cate, tell us what was the starting point? What was the kind of digital platform that you are using, the kind of the OS, and also what kind of pain point you were like trying to address, and perhaps what were your aspirations?
So as Matt said when he did the introduction, the aspiration was to become a strategic partner rather than an IT team that's in the basement and generally not liked. And we've been running ICT surveys for the last sort of 3 or 4 years, and we've gone from a 28% of staff saying actually they value the work that we're doing to over 60%, which is a massive increase, and that's all been part of this G Suite Chrome journey. Before that, we were using Microsoft products, and the pain points were around looking after devices, people not being able to collaborate, huge amount of email use, so a lot of copying in and attachments, and not being able to share information and work on things together.
Great. Elliott? Yeah, so it's more like a simpler starting point, perhaps like an ID, some money, and
Yeah, I mean, there has been transitions. We the back end of last year, we decided that Chrome would be our preferred platform for anybody outside of a software engineering role. And that has its challenges, right? There's ways of working in Windows or Mac that you need to support people as they go through that journey. But a lot of it really for us was around helping teams understand the tools that we use and why we use them. So it kind of like brings them up to speed with the rest of their colleagues as they join the organization. We were talking just before of the kind of the change management aspects when you move from one thing to another, and that for us was more of when people are joining the company, they may have been using different tools in the past, and helping them really kind of like integrate into the ways of working that we use at Deliveroo for G Suite and our communication products was important.
Yeah, and I think for us, I probably didn't realize at the time that the decision would be so important. So we started with the intent to, yes, sort out email and improve collaboration, those type of things. But rapidly became, actually this works really well. We can use Chrome as kind of an operating system to help our frontline teams. And I was kind of sick of seeing support calls come in from our sales teams. You know, we want them to be serving customers, not like trying to work out why the Windows updates caused a problem and stuff like that. So we rapidly made a lot of decisions. So we started our rollout in February for G Suite, probably completed in about June. Across all 4 brands, and that was across all of our sites, so logistics, supply chain, manufacturing, retail. And then we rolled out just over 1,000 Chrome tablets in October. We've started our single sign-on journey, so we now have taken a lot of the apps we've been working on for the last 3 years and using it from a security model point of view to try to make life easier for end users. Let's stop this proliferation of just logons and passwords being rubbish, frankly, and written down and things like that. And we are rapidly just trying to accelerate the change of the organization. So yes, there's really lots of good benefits to doing it, but it's the pace of change and ramping up technology change within a fairly established organization, been going for 50 years, you know, and a lot of those years having not invested in technology and now up against some really big online players. So how can we really ramp up the change internally to help people understand that we are going to be technology-driven and led? Not just it's there in the background helping the operation do stuff. It's actually leading the way on stuff. So it was probably a bigger decision than I probably realized at the time, if I'm being honest.
I think that's a really important point and that's where maybe our experiences differ. If you're working in an organisation that's a legacy organisation, so it's been going for a long time, and the London Borough of Hackney's been around for a very long time, it's IT as a driver of change and being that strategic partner. And we have within ICT at Hackney, we have 2 really fundamental principles. One is that we want to deliver services that people prefer to use, not are forced to use. So that genuinely the end user experience is something that people prefer to do. And that you can access the thing you need to do from any device, anywhere, at any time. So, and this is a part of that overall strategic approach.
So let's speak about implementation. So like it's always perceived as a big change, a lot of risk. Our clients are always kind of assuming this huge kind of IT project. And so tell us about like end user reaction, and perhaps what was the role of leadership or executive in this transition.
So the implementation we did in stages. As you don't do it all in one go. So we worked with different teams at different points. We had floor walkers, we had champions. We worked with each team to think about what their needs were and what the barriers or pain points might be for them. And I think equally importantly, we went ahead. So it wasn't do you want to do this? This is happening. And we're going to do it in stages, and we're going to learn as we go, and we're going to iterate our approach, but it is happening. And so I think that covered a lot of the initial noise and worry about it. But I would say that we're now picking up teams that have maybe adopted some of the G Suite tools, or they are using Chromeboxes and Chromebooks, or they have switched to Gmail, but they're not using Sheets, and they're not using, they're still wanting to send things that they've converted from a Google Doc back into a Microsoft Doc for all sorts of different reasons. So I think it's an ongoing, as you said, it's about change, and it's about systems thinking, and it's about thinking about the role that this is playing in how services are trying to design their services for the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that we still implement, and most of that is kind of like looking back at features or capabilities that have been added to the product over time. So I joined Deliveroo at the back end of last year, and just looking over things, we had IMAP allowed, right, which means that people could use other email applications. So when Google introduces all these capabilities into products or into kind of like Gmail experience, we want people to be using that. And so there are these transitions that we've still gone through, but like you just point on change. As a company, one of our values is to embrace change, and that's just because we're moving at such a speed that things that we do today might not necessarily be the right thing in 3 or 6 months' time. And luckily, we have a group of people in the organisation that really embrace that, and that's kind of expected. The Chrome side of things was another area where, you know, as we made that decision, it was still kind of fairly forceful decision. You know, people had opinions on which device they would prefer, and it was more for us to help make sure that we would guide people through that and help them understand that they can be productive and happy on the devices that we're providing. And again, I have to reflect on that. We're quite lucky that as a young company, most of the tools, almost all of the tools that we use are browser-based. So that we know that people can be happy and productive. It's just a matter of making sure that we support them through that change, and acknowledging that people go through that at different speeds. So.
Yeah, well, I kind of figured if I couldn't get a PR win out of getting off Lotus Notes, then there was no hope, really. But, you know, we took the organization from Lotus Notes to Outlook and another email platform, you know, to G Suite fairly easily. Practically, how did we do it? Trained a load of champions, did lots of training with the organization. Wasn't brilliantly well attended. You know, a few weeks out, it got more well attended towards the go live day and the big bang type thing. I had put my flap jacket on, ready for the grief I was about to get, pretty much. And I'll apologize for the Yorkshire accent, but I don't like this, me, was a common thing I heard for the first couple of hours of the day. And then actually, the noise just dropped, and it just went, if you know what I mean. And it was actually pretty straightforward. Rolling out, and I was a lot less laid back, actually, and I'll call out Net Primacy, who did it with us, than they were. They'd done this a few times. I was a little bit more concerned about it across supply chain and logistics, etc. You know, remote sites, much harder to reach if there's a problem, those type of things. I think practically, though, that went really well. The one that more impressed me, if I'm being honest, because we put a lot of focus and a lot of effort and energy, was rolling out 1,200 Chrome tablets to retail teams on the shop floor. We did it across 3 countries in 2 weeks, type thing. It takes 15 seconds to stage a device, not a couple of hours to set up a Windows one. You know, that's a fundamental change for us. So we can turn around issues and stuff. Actually, we haven't had that many. The support numbers are just going down on a continual trend from the retail teams. That, for me, has been more pleasing because, trust me, if there's an area of the organization that likes to generate noise, you know, the retail teams are brilliant at it. And that's because they're sitting there with customers and it's their job. You know, they do not want to be embarrassed when they sit with a customer. So that has worked fantastically well. But I'm pretty sure the PR win in Lotus Notes was the easiest thing.
Cate, you deployed the kind of grab-and-go kind of infrastructure. Can you tell us a bit more about the concept and how it has been kind of received by the end user?
It's been massively successful, really interesting. So we have several grab-and-go racks, and they're situated around different bits of the office. And it's really fascinating to watch what's happened as a result of putting them in. So lots of people have given up having their own device because they don't need it all the time. We have Chrome boxes on the desks. We have grab-and-goes in the racks. And people are moving between devices really easily. But it's really fascinating to see the human behavior that goes along with that. So in fact, they've been so successful that quite often the rack is empty. Because they're all out and people are using them. So we've almost had the opposite problem than we thought we would have. It's really interesting to see. I mean, we did some research recently, and it shows that most people are using a grab-and-go if they're going to a meeting and they need a device in a meeting. We've got over 90% of people are really happy with them, with the devices themselves. We're still working on how we track the usage and track when they've been returned and track where they are. But that's, again, I think that's a really interesting problem for us to work on.
So all of you mentioned this kind of change of behavior. So how do you measure that? Like, how do you measure kind of this kind of work transformation or change of behavior? Did you kind of put in place a specific dashboard to do that, or like, are you doing survey? How do you take the pulse of the organization?
Well, it's a really hard one to measure, I think, but you see it every day, if that makes sense. So we've got Workplace internally, so internal Facebook. And the point that you see a retail store manager using Hangout to help another store train on something, you kind of know it's just happened, realistically. We did a board meeting yesterday on Hangouts. An external person in the room doing regulatory framework that we've got to go through, and we had 4 people dialed in on a Hangout as well as 10, 12 people in the room. And it was fine, and it just worked, and it worked really easily. And you see moments of it every day, and you see a few champions who, and actually sometimes people you didn't expect. So our retail store director is one that I would have said, probably not going to be the biggest adopter of this quickly, actually loves it. And actually as soon as your leaders start using it, and using it every day, it just becomes so much more normal in whatever aspect. Don't get me wrong, we still have challenges. You know, getting everybody to get their shared folders on the drive. You know, actually, once you explain to them the benefits, they get it, and then they start doing it themselves. The finance team, you know, is clearly a challenge, no matter who is trying to roll out Sheets versus Excel. The reality is, I made a pact with our CFO that as long as they didn't send stuff out to the organization on Excel, and it was Sheets, I was happy enough with that in the first phase. And we've got some training going on with the finance team to move them across, but they've actually been really good. They've given it a go. They've done what they can, and for the busiest team in the world, as clearly finance are, then you know they have made a massive stride forward in doing it. So I just think you see evidence every day, is the way I'd say it.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that we can measure that are related to things like licensing or like devices that are out there, but I don't think we've done. I think there's definitely work we can do to utilize some of the stuff that is available. Like, you know, there's APIs for user metrics or customer metrics. We're not really aggregating that at the moment to find insight from it. There's audit logs that also have APIs where you could use that to kind of understand, you know, which teams are collaborating with others, but we're not really there yet. I mean, anecdotally, that you kind of mentioned, we had a restaurant conference that was held at our London HQ a few months back, and that was where we overnight kind of transformed the office space into this event space for some of our restaurant partners. And so we ask everybody for Wednesday and Thursday, you just don't come in the office, and it's fine. Right? You don't hear pushback, you don't see frustration, there's no anxiety from people of like not being able to access stuff, and just there's a confidence there that people know that the communication and collaboration products that we provide can allow them to, like you say, work from any device, any location. And that's kind of like one of those things that you kind of have to just remind yourself, like, did we just do that and it was fine and no one complained? You know, the only thing that people might not be able to do is print, which is probably a good thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were tracking several things, but I think there's much more that we could be doing. So we're tracking sort of hearts and minds, how people are feeling about the change through our ICT survey. So we track, you know, have you participated in a hangout? How was it? How do you feel about these things? But then there's obviously the data that's being generated by the tools themselves that we could do a lot more with. And interesting about the office space, because I think this is all related to change and the modern workplace and the cloud worker concept that Matt talked about. You know, doing this has enabled us as a team to really change the way our office space is designed. So rather than having rows and rows and rows of desks, we've got some stand-up areas, and we've got some shared collaboration tables, and we've got desks with double screens for some people who work on lots of data and need to do that. And I think the key for me is really going back to what is the user need. What does the user need to do? Not what do they want to do and what are they used to doing and what is their current business process, but actually what do they need to achieve, and then what do we give them to enable them to do that?
Great. So you started this discussion by saying that like one of the aspirations was to change the role of IT in the organization. So like looking back where you were and where you are now, can you tell us about like what do you think has changed in your interaction with kind of, let's say, your consumer, the business?
So, as I said, I arrived about 18 months ago, so they'd already started some of this work. The change that I've seen since I've been there is from a team that was in 3 separate offices, mostly in the basement, to a team that is much more able to go out and actually advocate for the role of digital and technology in services. And some really strong messages around looking at user need, designing accessible services, really thinking about the power of digital and technology, but also not starting from a customer saying, you know, I want a new database, and us just saying, that's fine, what type of database would you like? My background's actually in marketing and communications, and I often liken it to, if you run a communications team, a good communications team, when asked, I would like a leaflet, can I have 500 leaflets by Friday, doesn't say, what colour would you like them to be and can I design it for you? Actually says, what are you trying to do? What's the outcome you're looking for from this piece of work, and how can we help you? And sometimes the answer is digital and technology, and sometimes it isn't. And it's that whole system thinking that's really important, I think. So that's the strategic side, is being able to think about the service and what the service wants to do.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I think our team anyway, you think of like IT, a company that's only a few years old, everybody in the early days was IT, right? You know, that was just a company. And so as our own team has grown, it's really just come from like a support background. And so actually trying to bring the team into a world of adding, you know, contributing value and actually then measuring that. It's like you say, that's kind of like a key thing for us to also be able to justify the next set of things that we want to do, is to be able to quantify, like, yeah, we did this thing and this was the outcome, the return on the investment, or whatever it might be, rather than just we're doing it because we feel like it's the right thing. I think that's still an area where we need to improve, but that's the kind of direction that we're heading in.
It's a really interesting one. I think we'll look back on this year and look at how much we've managed to achieve. And not all of it was foreseen at the beginning, realistically. I think the things that I'm really interested now in about solving for the organisation are the whole onboarding process and levers and movers and all that kind of thing. It's just painful in audits and stuff when you get picked up on it, frankly. Just being able to, when someone joins the organisation, it's just really straightforward for them, and they're set up and they have access to everything they need. It just makes a world of difference to how an employee joins on their first day. They have a device that IT haven't spent 3-4 hours setting up for them. They just enroll it and give them one. They can log on and access everything. People can share stuff with them immediately. It just makes a whole world of difference for that employee experience. And I think when I also look back, I'll probably look back on the benefits that we're probably going to see from improving our security posture overall. And I'm not saying we were bad to begin with, but the level of control and tying everything together is probably pretty significant. And a world that's getting more and more complex and more threats, it just allows us that little bit of extra, to be a little bit more dynamic in how we approach it from a security point of view. And actually, I wouldn't have thought at the very beginning of this journey that I'd have gone, it's probably changed our whole DR plan as well. But it has, because the fact that we can actually authenticate across lots of our applications and they're cloud-based, etc., and you can work from anywhere, do we start thinking about the whole workplace recovery thing that we pay for? Does that actually become a thing? Can I just go and use McDonald's or Costa or whatever? In the event of an issue like that, how do we approach it and what do we do? So there are a few things we definitely didn't see coming. But I think it's been a really positive experience. In 2 weeks' time, I'll stand up at our sales conference and we'll do a live poll with our sales teams as to, has this improved how you work, and does it help you to work with our customers more? And I'm pretty sure it'll be a high percentage yes, because I wouldn't be doing it otherwise, frankly. So I think it's been good, and it's not been without challenges, don't get me wrong, because you get some. But it just works. That's probably the best thing I could probably say.
Yeah.
I think picking up on what you said about the measuring of the value that you've added, though, I think that's really important. And I think it's really easy to move on to the next thing that you're going to do and forget to do that bit. And customer expectation changes so quickly. So, it used to take 10, 15 minutes for quite an old machine on a desk to whir its way to life, and then you had to log in, and then it was painful. And now it's almost instantaneous, and we've got two-factor authentication, and we're using Google's single sign-on across some of our legacy applications. Not all of them, because it doesn't work with all of them, but that's the future coming. But customers, I think, are already forgetting that. So they're already used to how it's working, and therefore, if you don't actually stop and measure it and go, do you know what, we used to spend 15 minutes a day doing this, and now we spend 1, or you do some side-by-side video content that shows that, it's really easy for people to forget that you've already delivered that bit.
I mean, even just like the people's first experience with Hangouts Meet hardware in rooms, like for us, there's no cables on the desk, it's just people join and they can remote present without any cables, and you're not having 5 minutes of messing around at the beginning of a meeting, getting connected. And those are things that we can't really measure anymore because we've not gone back to the old way to come to the new. But those are just experiences that now people almost come to expect. So, so that in itself brings some challenges. But we've got Hangouts Meet hardware in all of our spaces, and even the other things that then introduces, like people's expectation that they don't need to be in the office, they're kind of anywhere, any device kind of angle. Really, they expect that now, because they know that if you're in a meeting room, you can connect to the Hangout. If I'm working from home, I can connect to the Hangout. If I'm in a car, I could dial in from the phone. Like, there's all these kind of expectations that come with a product that, like you say, it just works, and it works really well for us.
And I think, and that to me is also really interesting. So that's all possible, and yet we also need to think about how teams work and about what the importance of personal interaction is. So you can do all of those things, but actually teams then also really have to think about what is the best way of actually getting our work done. And sometimes it isn't to be doing it via Hangout. Yeah. And that's the bit that fascinates me around the change in an organisation and a modern workplace, where lots of things are possible, but actually, what is the thing that we should be doing? Yeah. And just going back to the expectation point, I did quite a big show and tell recently where I was using the slides on my phone because that was the easiest thing to do, and tutting because there was a split-second delay between me doing this and it appearing on the screen. And afterwards, I had to really remember that a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to do it at all. And certainly in my previous place, there's no way I'd have been able to do that. So my own expectation had changed.
Yeah, it's one of those things that Google introduces this feature that you've been waiting for, and you're like, yes, it's here, and then you go, oh, could it do this as well? And it's like, I'm sure the product teams are kind of frustrated by our kind of like constant
they
desire
like
for the next thing.
Keep pushing. Russell, you mentioned net primacy, and I'm going to ask this question for all of you. Like, what was the role of your partner in deployment and kind of looking at the vision of this transformation?
And because they're sitting there and they're all staring at me, I would probably say it I would say it anyway, because I'll tell you an honest truth. We probably wouldn't have done it without them. If we'd have done this as an internal project, we might have managed it, maybe, realistically, because there's a whole load of experience about having done it in other places. The training was excellent from the floor walkers and, training large meeting rooms of people and doing hangouts, etc. They train people, people who know what they're talking about just make a bigger difference, don't they? And also then when it came to things like the Chrome tablets, etc., that was a really big deal for us. It was a big investment, but it was a bigger deal if it had gone wrong, frankly. And I hope they can help me solve more problems in the organisation. I am a massive fan. We have a very small team internally. It's not big at all, and across the group. I'm a massive fan of finding partners who can help us do more. And I hope they can help me solve more problems, because if we're successful as a technology team, the business will be more successful, and net primacy will be more successful because we'll use them more. It's pretty much that simple. But the expertise, experience, and just really calm about stuff, frankly. I think I'm pretty laid back in the main, but it always helps when you've got somebody who you've got faith and confidence in. That just makes a big difference.
Cate, I know that I think that your partner got a kind of recognition, like industry recognition around the work they did with Hackney. So can you speak about the partner working with you?
I can a little bit, but actually because I wasn't involved in the hands-on implementation, I don't know as much as I probably should do. But I do know that we worked hand in hand with them to really think about how we were going to meet our users' needs and how we were going to do it in a way that brought teams with us along the way, and like Russell, it's the expertise in the room that helps you to make this change and hold the hand of people who are nervous about it.
Yeah, it's on chorus, by the way.
Yes, sorry, I didn't mention them by name, but yeah.
Elliott?
I mean, we also work with NetPrem, and I mean, I'm slightly biased. I also used to work for NetPremacy, but when we first, Deliveroo first started working with NetPremacy, it was kind of like further down, our journey. It wasn't until a good few years back when we first started working with them. And like you say, they're kind of like almost like an extension of our team in some way, but they're doing this all the time. And I mean, so am I. But it says Google in my job title, but. They're there as almost like trusted advisors, and they're able to kind of like look across the context of the other organizations that they're working with and give us advice. So we're kind of like pushing them sometimes to, there's a feature that Google introduces, and it might be in alpha, and we want to start using it now. And it's almost like, they're there to give us a good advice, whether it's the right time to start using it, whether they've experienced something with another customer, and it's maybe a good point to wait. Grab and Go was an example where it was still not GA. I think it's on GitHub and it's like 0.7, and we spoke to the team there, and they were able to just get it set up and working without too much hassle. And again, that's then been something that we then start to use, and we are then using and relying on it. And so they've been great.
And I'd probably add one more thing, just something you triggered is, I'm probably pretty much hated from the point of view. I love reading the blog posts about what's been released, and going, that's something that will be useful for us. How can we get it? How can we use it? If I think back to the concept of rolling out Windows updates,
you fear the updates.
Well, being dead honest, I have taken large swathes of our organization offline because an update has affected Sophos or whatever it might have been, and the whole concept of just getting new features as frequently as they come out, and not having that concern that it's going to be a problem that's going to drive calls through the roof on the help desk and stop us doing more important and useful things for the organization. It's quite a big deal. It's not to be underestimated, and yes, we'll still have Windows devices, but bringing the estate down in size to just be more manageable and easier to operate is quite a big thing. I don't really want my help desk to be doing like break fix in that sense. I want them to be helping users and becoming a different aspect of phone, because you want to try to do something that makes life better, not because it's an issue and it's broken, really.
Yeah, I mean, we find even just the feedback cycle of often there might be a scenario where there's a feature that we think, it would be good to have this thing, and then the next week it's released, or there might be periods where we're testing something early on, and by the point that it reaches general availability, the things that we were asking for are then baked into the product. A colleague of mine is speaking later today about context-aware access and how we've been using that to understand our device inventory, and the feedback that we were giving throughout that. Now it's generally released. It's kind of like some of you'll probably see in one of the slides, half of the things that we experience as frustrations are actually now there, so other customers don't have to go through that. And there's a balance of kind of accepting that. It's kind of, we quite like being the first ones to try something and figuring out the right way forward. But that kind of like feedback cycle of we contributed into the, and you listened and you built it, and now it's there for everybody else to enjoy.
Great. So we have a few minutes for questions, and we have some mic. Any question in the audience? We have.
Hiya. So we're quite, I guess, a mature Google Drive user. We've got 230 terabytes of data in there. It's been quite a migration, but we don't use Gmail. Gmail is like a religious war amongst our IT management, and there are other applications that we haven't got the energy to fight the battle on at this moment. GoToMeeting, Slack, Jabber, there's just things across the board. Did you have experiences like that where people were so connected to things that to take them on was almost not worth the energy. And how did you kind of get over that?
Yeah, I have those things every day, really. And I guess it's a little bit about fierce resolve from the point of view of there are some things that are worth fighting for, if you know what I mean. There's lots of things that I will go, it's just not, I'll play the long game in a number of things, and I'll edge away at it as we go type thing. But there are some things you kind of go, this is the thing to be a catalyst for something bigger, potentially. And, you know, I'll be dead honest, I probably didn't realize at the time how big a catalyst it might have been. It was, in some respects, it was dead easy for me. You know, I'd just been promoted to the board. I've been at the company for 8 years. Not everybody hates me. And generally, I could just kind of go, you know, this is my recommendation. We're going to do it. We've got 4 brands. They're all on different email systems. This is crazy. The sharing documents was becoming a right pain. You have no idea. It doesn't take the senior team long to not be able to do a board pack efficiently for a presentation or something, to have a burning, not quite a burning platform, but a will to want to change, if that makes sense. And also our strategy is leading, so for retailing in the digital age. So it was kind of easy for me to force through, and it wasn't a force, to kind of convince people that we were going to do this and be a catalyst for change for the organization. But I have those type of battles every day, and you just got to choose which one makes the biggest difference. And although it's really hard to measure, I think there's lots of use cases, you know, we've heard from a few of us today, about what difference it makes. Get some of the people who don't understand to go and visit a retailer reference site where they have done it. And I'll be honest, and I did a reference call for Next, who do sell quite a lot of furniture in the UK. But, you know, I believe in sharing knowledge from a technology professional point of view, because even in a retail space, we have some rather large, you know, organizations who are pretty aggressive in the retail space, and we need to just get better at what we do. So I'm happy to share the expertise that we have had and the experiences, but it's just about choosing which one to battle for, and maybe that's one that's worth it.
I mean, I think I agree. It's about it's pick your battles, isn't it? And it's that relentless focus on user need. So what is the need that means that they're clinging on so tightly to the thing that they've currently got? I think it's also really important to be clear that we don't just use G Suite. So we still have some email instances that aren't Gmail because there's a legacy application that can only work with a thing. We use Slack as well. We use Trello as well. The philosophy is much more about what is it you need to do your job. And where G Suite can't meet that need, then we'll be pragmatic about it. And there's the people clinging on to a thing because they're used to having a thing. And yeah, it is about picking your battle.
Yeah, I mean, email's like just one of those things, even aside from the kind of like end user aspect, there's all the kind of other stuff, right? So email gateways that you then don't need because it routes to Google, and Google does a great job of that. You simplify the experience across all of your individuals because they're not using 2 different user experiences. Even just articulating, email is one of those things that's really hard for people to get excited about email because it's email. But if you start to look at some of the things that Google's done to try and differentiate with like Smart Reply and Smart Compose, and search has always been, one of the things that was one of the core differentiators. Unlimited storage, all these kind of like things that there's enough there. It's just helping people get through that kind of like change. And again, like the numbers, if you just look at 1.5 billion, people that are using Gmail in the consumer world, that people can use it and other organizations have. It's just that maybe building that case to say, let's now make the leap. But even outside of email, video conferencing, and there's lots of I kind of interestingly went to speak to other organizations, and the duplication of these systems are like, why would it feels sometimes strange where we're quite good at just sticking to simplifying things, and so like the identity products, we don't need another thing that's going to do identity for us because Google's our primary IDP, and so things like that really just help you get the most value out of the kind of investment that you've made in that product.
Great. Thanks a lot for being there. We kind of really appreciate it, because we really think that like direct customer testimony is the best way to communicate the value of G Suite. So thanks again, and thanks for you also.
Thanks.